are a thing. We're going to watch just a clip of this food fight video that I put the link to. It's in the module for you for this week. We're going to watch just the first minute of this video.
You've been watching TV all day. Get off the couch. You know what? Why don't you get up, go to the store, and bring back some food?
So some places there is not fresh food, right? Some places that some of you have come from, food-like substances are the food available. Those who don't have access to the fresh food for whatever, a variety of reasons. 2.1 million households do not own a vehicle and live more than 1 mile from the nearest grocery store. So what you eat and how much you eat can have a huge impact, as we know, on our long-term health. And healthy eating habits are important to prevent, a long list of ailments. But some people just can't get to those places, get to affordable, nutritious food. So there is enough food. This is a real and growing issue. There is enough food for everyone on the planet to lead a healthy and nutritious life, but the global food supply is deeply inequitable, right? We'll go into a little bit more of that. There is food available, it's just not in the right places. So what about meat? In these food choices, this class wouldn't be very thorough if it didn't include this. As you did your ecological footprint, if you, showed on your eco-footprint quiz that you eat meat, it significantly changed how many earths you use. Growing meat uses loads of resources, energy and land and water. We're losing at least 90% of the energy that we put in when we choose to eat these things. The growing water constraints. To grow a cow requires thousands and thousands of gallons of water. To imagine that then being transferred to 1 pound of your ground beef. So then that water is potentially being polluted. And the impacts of this are wide-reaching, right? Eutrophication caused by excesses of nutrients and organic matters that cause algae and plants to grow excessively and use up all the oxygen in the body of water, which then, sort of strangles out other species. So land use and deforestation, the grazing land and cropland dedicated to the production of food, climate change, the methane that's produced by animals in this meat industry. So the average American consumes about 209 pounds of meat per year. And I'm celebrating people who are vegetarian or vegan, but that average, it all gets averaged like that. So we're going to look at a couple of images here that if you are sensitive, you may choose to close your eyes. We're going to look at some cows in the slaughterhouse. And thinking about the animals that are killed each year, right? We're thinking about how this happens. It's not just, it doesn't appear magically in the grocery store. We're thinking about the process of how that gets there, really digging into the behind the scenes of this. From there, we can think about how many number of animals are killed each year. This is worldwide. Chickens, 73 billion. 1.5 billion cows, 1.3 billion pigs, and on and on. Where it goes to is then to get processed, right? And there are people at each stage of this processing. And so from here, then it goes to the next set of people that grind it up or cut it, slice it, produce it, and pack it. And then it gets shipped in the refrigerated car, and then it moves on, and then it appears in the store. It's not a simple process, right? The packaged meat takes a lot. And thinking about the people that do that, the slaughterhouse workers, physical injuries are only the beginning. Just about 2 weeks ago, a slaughterhouse in Minnesota that's employing kids who are ages 14 to 17, and the injuries keep showing up. Only the physical injuries. But then there are 9.5 billion animals slaughtered in the US annually. Who's doing this work? Who are the people behind it? In an average cattle slaughterhouse, the employee tasked with firing the bolt gun that kills or incapacitates each cow, the average person doing this sees 2,500 cows a day, with the rate of 1 cow to kill every 12 seconds. Violent, physically demanding work. High rates of serious injuries in slaughterhouses, high pressure, repetitive and strenuous work, elevated risk for bacterial infections, the psychological toll, needing to disassociate themselves from their work so they suppress their feelings of guilt when committing these violent acts. Higher aggression, anxiety, hostility, PTSD, therefore higher substance abuse and addiction, higher arrest rates. So when we're thinking about the impact of eating meat on the planet, the environmental impact is high, but then there's the social and the human impact as well. And then of course the impact, doesn't require saying, the impact on the animals, right? So it brings together a lot of the things that we've been talking about. So we used this question back in week 7. So take a moment and talk to your neighbor about this. anyone want to share any thoughts? The microphones are out. Any thoughts about this? Intuition?
We have one on the balcony.
Thank you.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
So I've never personally eaten red meat in my entire life. Not as like a choice per se, because when you're 6 years old, you're not like, ooh, I want to be a vegetarian. But it's just a texture and smell and all of that. But like seeing those images, it just solidifies my choice, really, about not wanting to eat red meat. So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm in the balcony.
Okay.
Back here.
Oh, back there.
Hi.
Thank you.
Right here. So this just like made me think of a book that I read. I was talking to my lab mates about it, but I don't really remember the name, but maybe if someone else has read it, like they'll know what it is. But I read this book about how, it was a fictional book, about like in a society where like all the animals like were diseased and you couldn't like eat them or touch them or anything, and they resorted to eating human meat, and they started like keeping humans like in like warehouses and like cages and like all this stuff, and like treating them the way that we treat these animals. And it just like made me feel a lot of empathy and stuff like that. And I guess I'm kind of mad at myself that it didn't really totally change like what I'm doing with my life. And like I still eat meat and I still do stuff like that. But my lab mates and I were just talking, like, I guess the most you can do is just like be conscious of like where everything comes from. And like every Thanksgiving, my mom like will thank the turkey for giving its life to us. And like it's not something that we take lightly. And just being like conscious of the world around you and stuff.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
So I think about it a little bit differently, because I grew up around like farmers and stuff, and they also like grew up with like processing animals and stuff, and they also like they make money from it, and they don't see it as something bad, because they make money like through processing animals and selling and everything. And also, I don't know if it's like here the same, but I'm from Germany, and they like give the animals antibiotics. So when they would process the animals, they don't have like any diseases or something. But that's also like a problem, because we eat them and we get like immune to antibiotics, which is like a bad thing. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think what you're pointing out, thank you for sharing, is how all these things weave together in the choices that we make, the awareness and So thank you for sharing that, yeah. So there's a lot that goes into it, right? Then we move on to the next challenge or next point of fact. As I said earlier, it's been shown that there is enough food on our planet for everyone, but that food takes up more space in U.S. landfills than anything else. Nearly 40 million tons, or 30 to 40% of the entire U.S. food supply, is discarded by Americans every year. 1/3 of all food processed around the world is wasted. So, and then the environmental effect, right? 37 million cars. All that food waste produces methane in the landfills, and so then that goes into our atmosphere. So this food waste is something that is a huge problem. It's something to be aware of in our own choices. Understanding what the dates on our food mean is a big step. So if you have something in your refrigerator that says sell by April 5th, that means it has to leave the store by April 5th. That doesn't mean it goes bad in your refrigerator by April 5th. So a lot of folks don't understand what the dates on their food means, or even people working at the grocery stores don't know what those dates mean. Understanding that leftovers are okay to eat. You can warm them up and eat them again. So how can we minimize and be aware of the food that we're eating? So being aware. So what's another story, right? There are some movements, being a locavore, choosing the local food movements, aiming to connect local food producers with local food consumers, all that live in the same geographic area, in order to develop more self-reliant and resilient food networks, improving the local economy by doing that. So it sounds like the story that you're talking about of where you live, it's all connected in that community. So affecting the health and environment and community, the society of that particular place. So being a locavore is a thing. So for a long time, the farming in America, well, I shouldn't say a long time. In recent history, the story has been get big or get out, right? This story traces its roots back to somebody who worked with President Nixon in the 70s. He was the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, and domestic farm policies changed at that time. The story shifted from being small local farms to being these big industrial farms that need this kind of equipment to sow their wheat or their corn. It dwindled the crop diversity, and it massively increased the environmental footprint that goes into our food. So it also created these situations like degraded soil, excessive water use, heavy use of pesticides and herbicides. And so all these big farms do all these things and sort of leave the small farms in the dust. But I've watched that shifting, at least locally here. It's really exciting to think about the alternative approaches that have continued to survive, and some that are even now thriving. A growing number of Americans want to know where their food comes from, and connecting to the people that grow their food. So if you've ever gone to the farmer's market that's here in town, and seeing, the word, this is organic. What does organic food mean? It means that it's relying on fertilizers of organic origin, meaning that it's natural. Things that are, it's manure from the animals that are being raised in the neighborhood. It's bone meal. It's using the whole animal. When we take an animal for eating, then not just throwing the extras away, but using all the parts of it, getting that bone meal that help to support the soil. Organic, they use crop rotation and companion planting, using things that grow well together to support the soil. This all gets kind of highlighted in that next Extra Credit movie that we're going to show next week. So it's an innovation, and yet it's also going back to the traditional. So you can find those then at the farmer's market downtown. How many of you have gone to a farmer's market, either here or someplace else? Lots of people. That's exciting. It's one of my favorite places to be. There's one now in my community on Thursdays that runs from June until September. And so what I've observed there when I've been hanging out, that there's more direct connection between the producer and the consumer. It's celebrating the local economy. So there's less oil output if the farmer is driving 5 minutes from his field to the market, or even 20 minutes, 20 miles, whatever it is better than, the strawberries that are coming from California. So it's supporting the local economy, less oil input, and it's an awareness and choice by the farmers that then they share with the consumers to live lighter on the land. Sociologists have counted conversations at farmers markets and found that there are more person-to-person connections that happen at farmers markets than at conventional grocery stores. Thinking about that engagement between, even when you just walk up to pay that farmer for their goods, at the grocery store, I do the self-checkout and then I don't have to talk to anybody, but I'm not getting any connection that way. There's also community-supported agriculture, places here locally where you can work to 3 or 4 hours And you get to take home a food share. You get to take home a box of food. There's Penn State composting. This is really cool that we have this going on at Penn State. So you can put into those compost bins on campus any food waste, which includes dairy products, fruit, meat, any of your little wooden coffee stirrers, compostable plates and cups. You can put the meat and bones into that compost, coffee filters, coffee grounds, and tea bags, paper towels, and tissues. All of that stuff can go into those compost. It gets taken to a spot just on the edge of campus where it gets turned and processed, and then it goes back into creating all of the beautiful flower beds that are here on campus. It also goes to the student farm. If you're interested, the student farm, this is a huge opportunity. You can get involved there. Here's the contact. Leslie Pillen is the contact there. And you can find out the opportunities that are going there. And if you do that, it turns out that getting into the garden and getting dirty is a natural antidepressant. Think back to our connection to soil. There are unique microbes in healthy organic soil. Working and playing in soil can make you healthier and happier. It's something that gardeners and farmers have talked about for years and years, thousands of years. And now it is being proven that there's this contact with the bacteria, getting it into your bloodstream, and gardening is good for you on a microbial level. Right? It's reducing the stress. So all of these opportunities for connection, right? Food matters. So what can we do today? What we can do, like walking right out of this room. Reducing food waste. Thinking about the food that you're choosing. Where does it come from? What is the biggest bang for your buck? How do you get the most nutrition in for the least energy going out? Moderating meat. Maybe you don't want to give it up completely, but having a meatless Monday, even giving it up one day a week, makes a difference. So how could it be? Decreasing the size of your meat portions. So don't you find it odd that people will put more work into choosing their mechanic or their house contractor than they will into choosing the person that grows their food? It's the place where our nutrition comes from. So are you going to act or are you going to react? Are you going to create a conscious choice? Deciding, choosing that you're going to do something? Becoming responsible? But when you're reacting, you're doing something because of somebody else's choice. You're leaving the responsibility to somebody else. When you act, you're the puppeteer. But when you react, you're the puppet. Eating together. Eating healthier, eating together, being in community is shown. Remember back to the World Happiness Report? Having people that you can depend on, having people that you can be with is a big part of happiness. So for this week, your pack-back question, how efficient are my consumption choices? I've defined efficient and I've defined resources. I'll post this to Canvas and I hope that you have a beautiful day.